It's 2020 and we're celebrating a new year, thinking of those resolutions for the year to come. However, on the other side of the world, the news isn't so great. There's a new outbreak of an unknown virus in China. In the city of Wuhan, those who are becoming ill seem to have a link to a local fish market. People are becoming seriously ill, and cases continue to rise and spread. The World Health Organization then announces that this is a new coronavirus. The news that no one wanted to hear, that the outbreak is a global pandemic. Testing ramps up around the world. Governments provide guidance to the best they can. Travel plans are halted. Despite these measures, more and more people become ill. We see our first case in the bubble of St. Andrews. Then,
we will beat the coronavirus, and we will beat it together. And therefore, I urge you, at this moment of national emergency, to stay at home, protect our NHS, and save lives. Thank you.
For everyone, you must stay at home unless it is absolutely essential to go out, and that includes working from home wherever possible. Life should not feel normal for you right now, so if it is, then you are not doing the right things, and I want to ask you today to please put that right.
My name is Nathan Bailey. I'm a university reader in evolutionary biology at St. Andrews, and my main research interests are in evolutionary adaptation and the role of social behavior and social environments in that. And I'm situated in the Center for Biological Diversity, the Harold Mitchell Building.
I'm Ellen Garland. I'm a Royal Society University Research Fellow in the Scottish Oceans Institute, which is part of the School of Biology. I spend most of my time researching cetacean vocal culture, but also behavioural ecology.
My name's Tracy Gloucester, and I'm a reader in the Biomedical Sciences Research Complex in the School of Biology. And I'm interested in the structure and function of enzymes that are involved in processing carbohydrates.
So we all know each other from being members of the same school and kind of good colleagues and everything. But all three of us are also in the Young Academy of Scotland. About the time of the first lockdown, there was a meeting of the local St. Andrews chapter in which we all participated, and this idea just kind of hatched, and the three of us jumped on board.
And we wanted to get a complete diversity across the university.
Because we realized that the whole place functions as a result of interactions between lots of different types of colleagues, from academics to support staff to the estate staff who were obviously extremely important and on the front line of responding to the pandemic, to the highest levels of administration.
We sort of hatched the idea as a written component, but through just discussions with the three of us, it sort of spawned into more of a video series. We thought actually giving a literal voice to people at the university was a really great way of providing support for everyone.
I research as well as teach. So on the teaching front, of course, there's been this huge learning curve, which has been very time consuming as we've all transitioned to online teaching and then planned for dual delivery and rethought everything all over again. But I've also found it really illuminating and rewarding. I think I've thought a lot about the strengths and weaknesses of some of our more traditional teaching and assessment models, and that's forced me into some quite interesting experiments. And I think one of the other things that I found is a sort of across my discipline and across other disciplines too, a really good sharing of expertise. So I felt like there's lots of support from colleagues around the world and a real coming together of ideas. And that I think helps with a sort of sense of potential for lots of positive change going forward.
I am Italian. I am a very sociable and social person. I have found very, very hard, for example, meeting people and having to keep a distance. It has been a real struggle not having the support of a hug, of a handshake, and not really being able to have, let's say, the usual sit down that you would have with a friend of coffee and a good chat. And I think this has been particularly difficult when there have been friends going through a difficult time. And in a normal situation, you will just, grab your coat and say, okay, I'll come over, let's have a chat. And you just couldn't do that. And I think it goes both ways, not being able to offer support and not being able to have that kind of support when is needed, when really difficult testing situations come, has been the hardest thing. Of course, as I was saying, it's been wonderful that we, within our family, were together. But sometimes there are certain problems that you need to share with a friend. There are conversations that you want to have with the friends, and especially when friends are in need, you want to be there for them. And I just felt that, I don't know, a phone call, a FaceTime or a Skype has never been quite the same, and always has left that sense of, that really wasn't enough. I couldn't give what I wanted to give. And that was very, very, very frustrating. Of course, there were practical difficulties, but I think the emotional closeness that being physically together can give was the things that I missed the most.
I remember having that sense of like, it was kind of strange actually seeing people in person again. But yeah, I think it's all just been a bit mad and a bit everything happened at once type thing.
Learning to be patient, very important. Not just work, especially at the beginning in the first lockdown. When you're standing in the pouring rain, waiting in that queue, getting thoroughly frustrated because the person in front of you thinks 2 meters is actually 10 meters. And the person in front of you also doesn't seem to know how to wear a mask, can be extremely frustrating. So you do learn sort of patience.
I work at the theatre, albeit part of the university. Our sector has been absolutely decimated by this. I'm still talking to colleagues who don't know if their theatres will be able to survive past spring, and just the loss of that being in a room together for people who love theatre is hideous. It's really emotional, but also just in terms of colleagues losing work, as losing those opportunities to be together. Words can't describe how awful that is. However, we are creative people, and necessity being the mother of invention, we've found ways to try and make things work. Creative Scotland created a fund which we were beneficiaries of. So the opportunity is that right now we're finding new ways to work with artists. We're doing some lovely projects online, and I don't think it would have been quite the same if we'd been working in the way that we always had. So without sounding too Pollyanna, I think we take any positives we can whenever we can find them, really.
So I guess it took me a little while to get used to working from home. Obviously, when we were locked down, everybody suddenly went from going into an office to being in a home environment. And I think the big thing for me that was negative was when you go into work, you come away from work and it's easy to separate that work-life balance, if you will, or the difference between working and your personal life. Whereas being at home all day and then finishing work and you're still at home, it took a bit of getting used to. If I'm honest, now I actually quite enjoy it because I don't then have the commute in the morning. I don't have the commute after work. So Yeah, it started off as a negative, and now it's more of a positive, I would say.
I'm an inveterate positive thinker. I believe in positivity. I think it helps you through difficult times. And in a situation like the one in which we've found ourselves, I have felt that positivity and being positive were an incredibly important part of coping with this. And so I have tried to be positive all the way through. Sometimes it's been quite challenging to do that. But I think deliberately, self-consciously, and even on occasion in a slightly contrived way, adopting a positive frame of mind works for me. And I also think that institutionally, it's my duty and my obligation to be as positive, realistically positive as I can. So for me, the pandemic has in part been about finding the best ways to be positive. In terms of things where I felt that it's been a positive experience, I would have to start with the fact that I think that we as an institution have responded really well to what has been an extended crisis. You sometimes hear that people work well in a crisis situation, and that tends to refer to a couple of days or a week. We've been doing this for the best part of 9 months. And I do think that what we've seen is how people respond in an extended crisis, how they can prioritize what really matters, how you can let compassion come to the fore, but you also appreciate, it helps people to appreciate what, in business terms, it's essential to get done. And I think that particular sort of constellation of emotions and ways of seeing has been a very valuable learning experience that we have needed really to explore our humanity. But in the senior team that I run and lead, we have also persistently had to take big decisions fast. And we have done so on a kind of consultative and, where possible, iterative basis. And one of the terrific things for me has been that my senior team have just been fantastic all the way through. And you couldn't necessarily presume that that would be the case. But everybody has pulled their weight. We've got on really well. We have not fallen out with each other. In fact, I think we have really strengthened our bonds and our sense of support with each other. So from that perspective, it has been a genuinely and almost kind of surprisingly positive experience. And I think that you can read that across the university as a whole. I think that many people have shown themselves to be adaptable, flexible, incredibly creative, and just determined to get through this for ourselves, our staff and our students in the best possible way. And I would extend that right across the institution. And I'm not being sentimental about that. You know, not everybody has pulled their weight. This is real life. You can't expect that to happen. But the majority of people have done, and they've done so willingly and in a very constructive way. So sometimes, you know, disruption can be beneficial in terms of enabling you to see the best in people. The flip side of that is that, of course, it has taken its toll. These have been very hard times for people, and they've been hard in practical terms, but also because many people have been worried and anxious, and we have all felt that. I've had COVID in my immediate household. It's a frightening thing when it happens, and we have lost things. Some of us have lost loved ones and friends, but we've also lost practical, real things in our daily professional lives. We've lost a normal teaching experience. We've lost graduation. People have lost research leave. We were unable to go ahead because of our financial situation with running promotions. So we have a sense of things that we have lost and things that we will not get back from that particular period of time. And everybody has experienced that to a lesser or a greater degree, but also I think quite an extended degree. And that as I've said, that takes its toll on people. So you have to put all that in the balance. And I imagine we will come on to this, but I also think, you know, when you put it all in the balance, there comes a point when you have to kind of stand back and also give yourself the time to think, what have we learned from this? What can we take away? What can we learn that's valuable in terms of what we might want to keep? And what will we actually quite happily set aside?
Lockdown was, well, I suppose we're still kind of partly in it, but lockdown has certainly affected my work in a lot of ways. I started my job on the first day of lockdown. So I've only been into the office once, and that was just to pick up my laptop. So all of my teammates pretty much have only met online. A few of them have maybe met just by stopping by to pick up things from their house that I might need, or a social distanced chat. But yeah, it's been a very, very strange situation work-wise, and learning a whole new job, and something that is not within my background. I was very much recruitment focused and HR focused before, so moving into kind of fundraising has been a whole new challenge for me, and obviously doing that from lockdown and from home has been quite strange. But at the very beginning of lockdown, I had my toddler off nursery as well. So I'm a single parent, so it was a big challenge trying to work with him kicking around. But eventually I just managed to kind of swap a few days with my ex so that he looked after him every now and again, or for 3 days during the week, which gave me a little bit more flexibility. But yeah, I mean, work-wise, it's been great having the flexibility of being able to do my washing or a bit of tidying whilst I'm at home, have the odd break to do things outside and go for walks or runs. And obviously it was great getting that extra time with my wee boy, although it was very challenging for the working day.
I think what I would say to myself entering lockdown is that the isolation takes a very heavy toll, and there is no point trying to pretend that that is not the case. And every effort that we made, especially at the start, to continue as if we were not at all affected by this isolation, I wouldn't say was wasted, but was costing us a lot more than it should have been. I'm thinking, for example, about homeschooling, trying to achieve every day the absolute maximum, and obviously ended up utterly exhausted in the effort. At the same time, trying to do everything at a pace or with the level of achievement in line with what it would have been the case in normality.
The most challenging part of lockdown for me was both, you know, having to juggle work and my child, but also the lack of other adults. I think I really struggled with. As much as I loved spending, you know, so much time with my 3-year-old at the time, he's now 4. I missed that buzz of people, and whether that was from the office or whether that was from socializing, it was a struggle just being literally me and a small child. That was the extent of my interaction on a daily basis with another human.
What we've all missed, I think, well, I know because we've talked about it, is the banter in the office. The press office is a fun place to work. It can be challenging. It's never dull. And there's some interesting stuff goes through one way or the other. And we all got on very well and have had a really good laugh, you know, as well as being, you know, working hard and feeling, you know, the stress sometimes. We could break it up with jokes and laughter. And I know we all miss that. So
my job is working with the master's students in the School of Management. I'm the director of postgraduate programs. So I have kind of oversight over the master's students and the 6 programs that we offer in the School of Management. And of course, immediately the thing that was affected was our ability to see our students, to meet with our students, to be with them face to face, which was a really big change. And it took a lot of getting used to. And of course, that continued across the summer, which would have been a time where we would have had a lot of face-to-face contact with our students. In particular, I would have been supervising their master's dissertations and meeting them one-on-one in my office and talking with them in depth about their research. And of course, none of that was possible. And so we very quickly had to make decisions about switching to using forms of technology we'd never used for teaching.
I also found this remote delivery through recorded lectures actually personally very difficult, because my stuff that I teach is quite theoretical and it's kind of difficult. The concepts are difficult. And normally when I'm teaching, I will be looking around the room while I'm explaining stuff. And I think I pace a lot according to reading the faces. And if people are looking lost, I'll stop and talk to them. Even in quite a big room, I'll do that. So I found it actually really quite difficult being this sort of a broadcaster rather than an interactive teacher. So that I found all pretty challenging, I must say. I also don't enjoy Panopto recording. I have my cuddly toys on the desk. They sit there and listen. But even so, I find it seems quite an unnatural process, just sort of talking to yourself. So yeah, also technically a bit challenging, and that was another negative for me, is that I felt I spent a lot of time over the summer actually arguing with IT problems, some of which actually turned out to be quite profound. And I did then discover, and this is going to the upside of things, there is brilliant support at the university, both from immediate colleagues in biology, some of whom had kind of wrangled their way around the same corners themselves, but also going to the sort of higher level, to the IT support team, teaching support team, have been extremely helpful and have very quickly responded to problems and queries. So actually the feeling of solidarity amongst colleagues has been brilliant.
Working from home, because I've never done it to this extent before, the experience has shown me that I can do it, that I can do it under multiple stresses and pressures. I've sort of learned that I enjoy both aspects. So working from home in certain ways, in certain times, especially when the kids are at school, I can get so much done, which I couldn't do in an office necessarily. But I do miss people, so there are two flip sides to that coin. So I'm hoping when things move forward, when everything's open again, that perhaps both will be accommodated for, because at a business level, the university, excuse me, needs us to work hard and achieve things within certain timelines. And I feel that working from home sometimes for specific tasks is more efficient than traveling all the way to Fife, finding somewhere to park, being interrupted.
The absolute most difficult thing was that I have not been able to go and visit my mother in America, and she hasn't been able to come and visit me. And my mother's 85 years old, and I guess even just being 85 kind of puts her in a vulnerable group. I wouldn't want her to travel from the United States here. And, you know, we haven't been able to, my daughter and I, neither of us have been able to go and see her. And without a doubt, that's been the most difficult thing. You know, about 5 years ago, I decided that my priority would be to use my time off work, any kind of holiday time that I had, at least once a year to go and see my mother, and for her to come and see me, just because she's getting older and I want to make sure I see her as much as possible. So that has without a doubt been the most difficult thing, is not being able to see her. And
one thing that lockdown has really brought home to me is that digital and online are great supplements. They're not great substitutes for person-to-person interaction, particularly of the sort that I quite often need to do in my role as principal. So I have missed that and been frustrated by it, and have worried, as I think many other people in my position have done, as to whether it's possible to do your job to the fullest degree if you are inhibited from having the sort of sit-down in-person contacts that are a really important part of representing the university of engaging with our alumni right across the world, and also in pursuing fundraising and in philanthropy. So, I know this is partly a question about sort of outside work, but for me, it's also a question about, how one generally lives one's life. And I live a lot of my life on the road. So adjusting to that has been actually quite a challenge. But I also think that when, normal service sort of resumes, getting back and getting, as it were, sort of match fit will take some time, because you keep up the sort of regime that I'm normally used to just because it's what you do all the time. When you step off that particular treadmill, I think it becomes harder to get back on it. So I'm sort of quite interested to see how I'll take to the resumption of my old life when it becomes possible again.
Well, I think perhaps other people may have mentioned that one of the best thing that we were able to understand during the lockdown is that our lives used to be incredibly busy and incredibly rushed, and the pace that we were self-inflicting on our lives wasn't really that necessary. And being together without that framework, that sort of challenging testing framework at times, has just showed us that we really didn't need to run that much and to be in so many different places all the time.
The core was a reassessment of time, especially early on when we didn't know how long it would last. There was an easing in some of the sense of pressure of getting certain things done. When we found we couldn't get ingredients or materials we needed, or resources or people, we learned to take a breath and just say, okay, it can wait. It has to. And we found alternatives, or just set whatever it was to one side.
On the plus side, that whole experience gave me some new insights into school level education, which I think might eventually factor into some of my university level teaching. But certainly juggling the school schedules and the homework for them, and just the wraparound childcare was really a full-time job in itself. And I think for all the other working parents that are out there, I really do want to be clear that the impact of that on people's research productivity and other areas of their work for the next few years is going to be huge. And I know plenty of dads were affected as well as mums. So it's not just a problem for the female workforce, although there is evidence coming out that it did perhaps affect women slightly more than men. So I do think that in the coming months and years that working parents in particular are going to need some support.
I think I put this in one of my weekly messages. My family, we had a death in the family. Actually, one of my cousins, my age, they died because of a long issue on cancer. And of course, the hard thing there is none of us could get to the funeral. But we're just one of many people who've had to deal with that. The last one I'll sort of tell you about, and I put it in one of my weekly messages. It was very sad. We had to put one of our beloved cats to sleep. Now, my wife is a vet, so we could do it, but it's the fact that we had to do it ourselves. So those are sort of 3 examples of tough things certainly in the first lockdown, where you actually basically just have to, roll your sleeves up and just say, this is what we've got to do.
I don't want to go into massive detail, but I'm somebody with caring responsibilities for an elderly mum, and it has been a challenge that she lives not far away. She has a wonderful team of carers who look after her, but of course during lockdown we actually were not allowed to go visit, and that was incredibly hard for her. And I know every morning I turn on the news and I hear stories of all the even more difficult challenges that other people are facing. So I know I'm not alone. I know this is a very widespread experience during the pandemic, but yeah, that has been difficult.
But at the same time, I really miss the connection with some colleagues at work. While some relationships have blossomed using this format and we've grown stronger, I think others, it just feels like, you need to be in a room together. Some of my colleagues were so fond of each other, just want to hug them. Others, it's just great to be able to see people. I think I've forgotten what height people are because we only see this much. There are odd details of life. I'm involved in the Aurora programme just now, and my usual mode of networking at these things is just to stand next to someone, as we all do when we're pouring ourselves a cup of tea, and just commenting on the room, on what's being said, being able to develop natural conversations. Everything like this has to be planned. So we lose a lot of those opportune encounters, those encounters that haven't been planned. And I really miss that.
My postdoctoral researchers who are modelers have still found life difficult because of the isolation, because the reason they've come to St Andrews and chosen to be at St Andrews is the atmosphere, the other people around that they can work with. And I think both PhD and postdoctoral researchers have been finding that working from home, sometimes they just feel isolated, and that really impacts productivity because you're not getting the spark of chatting to someone else. Oh, I'm wrestling with this issue, right? I don't know what to do. This bit of code isn't working. Somebody else will often say, oh, right, yeah, I've met that problem. Here's what you do. Or have you thought about so-and-so? And although we've all been trying to work remotely in those ways, there is something about actually being in the same building and chatting over coffee and so on that really promotes those positive interactions. So I think we've all really missed that in our research work.
I also, I saw a lot of things happening within the community, which was really inspiring. I became a lot closer with my neighbours. I just moved into the street that I'm in just literally in December last year. So it was really good just to kind of get to know neighbours, and Alfie had the other kids in the street that he could play with outside. These little things are it's just amazing to see how many people were wanting to help others. Individuals who are, even when the students came back, I saw loads of people saying, right, what can we do to help the students? Can we cook them home cooked meals and take them to halls? And it really just kind of makes you feel really proud to be part of the St Andrews community. And I think that's something that will always kind of stick with me after we kind of get back to some form of normality.
This is a funny question indeed. I took quite a bit of time going back and forth on the question if I want to actually fully retire, especially as I'm doing it about 10 years earlier than most people would do it. Now, if I have the opportunity to roll back, I would decide exactly the same way, just much quicker. So I absolutely do not regret for having stepped down from my position, but it took me quite a bit of going back and forth on the matter. And nobody could know for how long it will last, and we cannot know for how long it will last, even speaking at this moment in early November.
I guess, as the head of school, I always sort of introduce that, biology is probably the biggest school in that we have about 400 staff. And as a result of that, it's my signature that's on all the documents, all the risk assessments and everything. And that can be a little bit daunting at one stage. But one of the things I've found is that, my colleagues have really come to the fore. I've come across a number of colleagues who have shown skills that they really I didn't know they had beforehand, which is fantastic to see. And this is at all levels, from some of the technicians through to sort of my senior colleagues on management group. A couple of times I've had to ask for volunteers to actually take on work, and, sort of like a call to arms, and people do. They do come and actually step up. And even though I know they're taking on extra work, they're doing it to help me, but also the school as well.
So for me, certainly, obviously, a positive would be we've always been trying to push people to try ledger capture and take that technology on board. And we did have a little bit of pushback. So this is kind of, if you will, fast-tracked it. And it's got a lot of positives, because if you've got content that's now digital and is now available online, students with disabilities and from an accessibility point of view, it's a fantastic tool. and it kind of opens up this, like the experience is now equal to all. So, you know, whether you've got a learning disability or you're hard of hearing or whatever, you can still participate in that kind of same experience as everybody else. So that's a great positive, because now people are able to access that. They can learn at their own pace, for instance, with the pre-recorded material. I'm dyslexic, and so I can really appreciate being able to, you know, go back and kind of review a lecture at my own pace and take notes and things at my own pace. So now that's available to everybody, whereas before it was only available to specific departments who chose to opt into the lecture capture environment. So yeah, for me, that's a great positive.
And I found that really fantastic, that chance to experiment with all these formats. I think it's really inclusive. I think you can get a really much greater diversity of participants, so people from all sorts of backgrounds, not just the people who are in the kind of job in a well-endowed university that can pay for travel funding, for example. But I've been at conferences where there have been school teachers who wouldn't normally be able to get away from the classroom for long enough, or who wouldn't get funding. And of course, they're environmentally friendly as well.
Other positives that I could add, I think, are that I've found some of my students to be amazingly resilient and coping extraordinarily well, given that I think the experience they're having this year is not what they had hoped for, and they must be disappointed. I know that actually some of them have said that they find aspects of the virtual teaching to work very well for them, which is interesting, and I had not expected. So some of the students say that they really like the recorded lectures because they can play back the bits that they find hard to understand, and they can loop them and go through them a few times. Whereas even if in class, they might pluck up the courage to ask you to explain something one time again, if they still don't get it, it's very difficult for them to ask again for you to explain. And in fact, I would say generally that's not expected etiquette. Generally, if a student asks you to repeat something, you will do it once, and then probably you would gloss over it if they asked again. So I can see this. I find it very interesting, and it did lead me to think that actually a really good thing to do if we go back to in-person teaching, I still might want to give some lectures in person, but I would panopto them so that any students who want to go back through and go over my incoherent explanations, they can get them another time.
In biology, in one sense, our in-person teaching, we're always going to be sort of easier to organize in one sense, because our in-person teaching is the practicals. In particular, I need to sort of praise our teaching technical staff. They've done a fantastic job, and they really have allowed us to actually put on some really high quality practicals, which the feedback we're getting is fantastic from the students, in that they appreciate what we've done. It's also something to remember, our teaching technical staff are the ones who are actually in person the most. Out of all of our colleagues, they're the ones who see students every day.
Use technology where it works better. There are definitely instances where technology works better than being in person or being face to face. So I think that's one thing. We've learned when technology is helpful and when it's not. So for example, one of the things that my Pilates clients have found is, for many of them, especially those with small children or those that live far away from St. Andrews, the ability to just walk into the next room, turn on your computer and exercise with a group of people live has been a real amazing thing for them. They don't have to travel, they don't have to find childcare, they don't have to rely on their partners or spouses to look after their kids. They can just go into the next room, put down a mat and exercise. So that's been a positive thing, learning where technology can benefit us.
Because of course it wasn't possible to achieve everything in the same way. And it costed us a lot emotionally to try and maintain that pace until at one point we just we just understood that we couldn't have really carried on for much longer if we continued to ask so much of each other. Once we realized that, in fact, we were all doing extremely well, given the circumstances, given the pressures, given the isolation, we kind of sort of had a bit of a patting ourselves on the back moment and realized that circumstances were tough and unusual. And there was nothing wrong in feeling unusual and admitting that things were difficult, and therefore it was okay to let go of a few little things here and there and not expecting quite so much of each other.
Yeah, just appreciating people a lot more and being more forgiving of people when they do things that might upset or anger you, and just accepting people's differences and how they are and how they appreciate how I am. It took this pause in life for me to see it, and I'm grateful for that. It's been good.
We've also learned that we can do all sorts of things via a digital and online means, where we don't need to travel. And what I would say on this is that I think we as an institution have to learn from this, from the sustainability perspective. What it will mean for me, and I know that I'm not representative, is that I will be much more circumspect about some aspects of my travel. Regularly, pre-COVID, I would be up and down to London 2, sometimes 3 times a week for really key meetings. I think it's very unlikely that I will do that again, certainly not to the same extent. However, what I have learned, and I've already indicated to most of the boards that I'm on that this is the line that I will take on this, is that I think in the future, meetings are either with everybody in situ or with everybody online. It does not work to have a mixed economy. And so I think boards are going to have to make their minds up about this, that either everybody's down in London for a particular meeting or we're all meeting online. I don't think you can and should mix it up. It just creates a kind of streaming and a hierarchy that doesn't actually make for the good exchange of ideas and decision making. So I know that I will be more circumspect about my travel. I also know, as I've indicated, that it will be necessary for me to do some serious amounts of long haul again when it's possible, because I need to remake the in-person connections with alumni, supporters and donors across the globe that take the university forward. And I accept that, but I will be very circumspect about how I plan my travel. And I'm delighted that the Environmental Sustainability Board is working with us so effectively in terms of how we can most meaningfully engage with carbon offsetting. So I think that would be a really important part of how we conduct our business in the future.
Positive outcomes has been that I've actually enjoyed working from home. I think I didn't say that earlier on, but actually I really have. I like my house, and it's nice because my husband is working from home as well, so we get to have lunch together. And normally he works in Edinburgh, and we have quite a short social time at the end of the day after he gets back from work. It's actually really nice to just be around at the same time as my husband, and it's made me think that after post-COVID, one of the changes that I would quite like to make is to formalise working from home some days so that we can continue to do this. I also think that working from home saves, for me, about an hour of commuting time back and forth to work each day. That's an hour I can use. That's a valuable hour. It's also saving carbon as well. So in those ways, I actually think that has been really positive for me.
In terms of local shopping, actually, it was more a blessing than restriction to not go to shop at the supermarket, but restrict oneself to local shopping, because we started buying eggs locally, whatever was seasonally available. whatever was in the local butchery, and we are blessed to have a very nice health food shop in Grail. So kind of like, embracing the local was probably one thing which I believe was a very good experience for me.
Normally my meetings often take me across town, so St Andrews is quite a distributed university, so sometimes meetings will have me kind of pinging across from one side of town to the other. There is a time overhead there, which actually I think now we might do some of those meetings over Teams instead, saving everybody, maybe a quarter of an hour, half an hour of sort of just transit time between meetings. I think that might be a really good thing going forward as well. And I don't think that will stop us meeting socially, but I think it might just be quite efficient for some work meetings to do them that way.
I had days during lockdown, and I'm not proud of this. I had days when I spent literally 10 hours a day sitting in front of my computer doing incredibly urgent meetings. And I had 1 or 2 weeks when I didn't actually, not quarantine weeks, but weeks when I didn't actually leave the house. Because I was so busy sitting in front of a computer doing meetings. And I don't think that was very good for me in all sorts of ways. But it also absolutely reinforced to me the limitations of this particular medium. It's functional. It serves a purpose. I love the fact that after 9 months, we all still don't know most of the time whether we're on mute or not. And that, frankly, is because we're sort of punch drunk with this experience. It's easy to say how wonderful online has been, that it has enabled us to keep our academic and educational engagement going. Of that, there is no doubt, and it's been essential to us and to our business model. I accept that. But boy, have we also experienced its limitations. We're people, we like in-person contact, most of us. And I've really learned from that. So, and one of the things I've learned from that is whatever we do digitally, it needs to be really, really good quality.
At the start of lockdown, it was quite difficult for me as a single parent initially. So when lockdown was announced, I didn't have Alfie, he was at his dad's house, and I absolutely freaked out because I was like, what's going to happen here? Nothing had been said about split families, and I really was panicking that I wasn't going to see my child again for the duration of lockdown, and how do I get him back? And I was glad when I saw on kind of forums on the internet that I wasn't the only person who had that initial panic, because I guess nobody knew kind of what to expect. But I think if I were to go back, I would probably say to myself, don't panic. This isn't going to be a complete disaster. It's not, we just need to do this, and we need to get through it, and we will get through it. And just take one day as it comes, one day at a time, because there was nothing really else that we could do. And I think the stressing out about it wasn't going to help me or help Alfie or help anybody really. So I think I would just say, just take it a day at a time, and it'll all be fine.
But the number one thing, I think, is to make sure that we always are in contact with each other, not just with the students, but with their colleagues as well, to make sure, always, are they okay? I mean, we've had a few times where we've had some people who are having a very difficult time. And so what we've had to do is sort of put like networks of people just to look out for people, just to make sure they're sort of okay. And we shouldn't forget that when we all just assume everybody's okay. Always, make sure that we keep going, sort of say, are you okay? Is there a problem? Can we help? I think that's what I would like to see going forward the most.
What I would add as a final thought is that I think we have all collectively learned a lot from this experience. It's not an experience that I would necessarily like to repeat, but at least I know that if we have to, we can come out on the other side. And I think it is very important to reflect on how much this situation has asked us to sacrifice, us all, not me personally. I know that obviously there are a lot of people who sacrificed a lot more, and how important it is therefore to to make sure that we do all we can to not to make that sacrifice pointless, and to make sure that we do all we can to limit the sacrifices that we all collectively will have to do in the future in similar situations.
I think I'd have two pieces of advice. I think my first one would be hold your nerve and trust yourself. So I imagine I'm not alone in having had quite a lot of panicky moments and moments of feeling really overwhelmed. But actually looking back on the last 6 months, we've all been really quite creative. We've all been really flexible. We've all sort of dug deep. And I think that that means that we should all take some real strength from that and know that no matter what is thrown at us next, if we hold our nerve, we will get through it.
What can we do? What can we carry with us that would be positive from having lived through this extraordinary experience? I think that when we're on the other side, and there will be another side, we will recognise our own resilience. We'll recognise that when things beyond our control happen to us all, we will come out the other side and we'll survive, and we'll find new ways of doing things.
Probably just to make more effort to get out more. Because I like staying at home. So I haven't really hated lockdown. In fact, people who know me are sort of a bit concerned about how much I like lockdown, because I quite like being at home or around the home, you know, in the garden or walking the dog. But I think I would have said to myself, do try and do what you can. If all you can do is a walk, and you know, on a beach or in a park, make sure you do it. Don't just not do anything. I would say more of my advice going forward to myself, not so much that I would change what I did from March to now, other than to do more physically. But going forward, I would say to myself to do more, just to do more. It's very easy to go to work and come home and put your feet up and watch the telly. And there's so much going on. And through lockdown, it was great because there were lots of things that moved online. And I tried to watch movies that I'd never seen before in languages that I didn't understand, and you know, log on to lectures by some of our amazing academics, and visiting professors and all the rest of it. And I would say to myself and to anyone going forward, do so much more of that. It's all there, and a lot of it's free. And it's just so fascinating what the university is doing, what people are doing that you wouldn't hear about in your everyday job. Keep an eye on the events calendar and try and go along to whether it's virtually or physically, to a lot of the events that the uni organises, because there's some really amazing stuff out there. But oddly enough, I have seen more colleagues this way, because we were in the Butte and I didn't get out and about much. My job's fairly, you know, sedentary. And so I would email or chat to people on the phone. But now we do quite a lot of Teams calls and Teams meetings. And I've actually seen more people than I did when I worked at the Butte, which is quite interesting.
And I've really appreciated small gestures, like being phoned up by the deputy head of school, who's phoning around people just to see how they are, right? I think that's a lovely thing to do. I've found that everybody at every level that I've interacted with, including extremely busy people with huge responsibilities, have made time for me when I've asked for it. So I've really appreciated that. Huge, huge thank you.
And then the other piece of advice I would give myself is just be kind to yourself. Cut yourself some slack. I think perhaps especially if you're a working parent and trying to juggle everything else as well as your job, you're not superhuman. Everyone needs time to recharge, and above all, everyone needs time to sleep, as well as get out on their daily walk. So yeah, hold your nerve and be kind to yourself.
Yeah, again, quite a short answer. I thought about this and I thought, actually, be patient, breathe, take time, and actually, number one, just trust in your colleagues. I think this actually, what you're doing at the moment is a great idea. Getting people to be sort of like talk about their experiences. Hopefully it sort of shows people that you're never alone. Lots of people have problems, and if we do sort of like try and sort of get those stories out there, what it does is go, okay, this person's had to deal with this as well. How did they go about it? And even sort of like reach out and say, I need some help. Don't be afraid to ask.
So, I mean, I just wanted to say we want to thank all of the participants and everyone who supported and reached out to us during this whole process. It's been just fantastic, and we feel very privileged to be able to put forward literal voices for these lockdown tales at St Andrews.